I'm Dan Shuart. I'm with Future Point of View. I'm a senior consultant and going to be talking about AI tools today. So I'm sure you guys have heard a lot about AI tools. It's interesting how much it's in the news. I give several presentations, and the last two I gave, they said, well, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but it's got to be about AI. So it's just top of mind for everybody. Watch the news, see it on TV. Seems like this day and age, it's either AI or Taylor Swift seems to be the hot topic. I never realized that I could watch a Kansas City Chiefs game and learn about Taylor Swift. And the interesting thing too was that I saw a graphic, an analytic on Travis Kelce's performance when she's there and when she's not there. And that's actually analytic. They call it the Taylor Swift factor now for Kansas. So anyway, it's getting crazy. But today we're going to talk about tools. I think there are a lot of tools out there, but I think it's really more important now to talk sort of the framework of these tools. I want to talk about governance. I want to talk about risk. You know, a hard start risk guy, if you're in the keynote this morning, I talked a lot about risk around AI. So we'll take a little deeper dive on that. But I want to do some context before we get into the meat of some of the tools that are out there that I think may be beneficial to you or you may already be using. So with that, what I like to do is make this more engaging. We have a small group here, but if you have a device, if you could scan that QR code, I'm going to push some polls right to you guys, ask you some questions, because I can tell you how I feel. I will tell you how I feel. But the idea here is your colleagues, you can kind of see what they're talking about, what they're thinking on this. Now, a couple things. Totally anonymous, so we won't know who's posting what questions. You can only see the results if you participate in the poll. I won't show the results up here, but as soon as you answer the question, then you'll see the results up here. So you can do QR code, or you can go to slido.com, and you'll get that middle screen, and you can type in FPOV AI and hit enter. It may take you to another screen, say join, but that's the screen you'll end up on. But you'll need to go to polls. You'll see polls in the upper right hand. Hopefully, be able to go to that. We're good? Okay, good. So I'll push some along the way. In fact, I'm going to do one here pretty quickly, just an easy one, just to make sure it's going. So, right, so you should get a poll out there. Okay, good. Great, so that's how we're going to work. I'll have screens like this kind of throughout it. So I just want you to get a feel for what other people are thinking when we talk about some of these issues. Also, in that, you can post a question in there. You'll see the Q&A. Small group, you can just yell at me, go, hey, I have a question. You will make this really informal. But if you'd rather put it in Q&A, I'll try to get to the questions as we go through this. And then towards the end, I want you guys to put in, if you have ideas at any time that you'd like to share with the group, just put them under the ideas section. And you'll be able to, let me make sure you can get to that. Yeah, you'll be able to post an idea and then share that. And we'll push these back out. I'll give you an opportunity to see the results of all this. I'll have a QR code at the end of it, so you can see all these results and everything going on. So, okay, with that. All right, so AI, wow. Big topic. There's a lot to cover in AI. I won't try to overwhelm you too much, but I've been doing IT now, and maybe I'm the oldest here, a couple senior people maybe, but I've been doing it 40 years. I started in 1981. And so I've seen desktop computers, why would anyone want a computer on their desk kind of thing. Been through .com era, mobile devices. This is bigger, and we've only seen the beginning. And the reason I say it's bigger is that for the first time, a computer code algorithm can act like a human in a lot of ways, and it's getting more so as time goes on. And we haven't seen that before. And so that's why this is going to be the biggest game changer, is because you can have a system that behaves in many ways like a human being behaves. And so this is the game changer. This is the big piece that's going on. Augmenting human behavior has never really been done before at this level. And I'll show you a landmark time that happened not too long ago where this really took place. So as we go on, we'll talk about negatives, we'll talk about risks, we'll talk about the dark side of AI, right? That is really popular, a lot of hype. Elon Musk loves talking about the dark side of AI. That's great, but there's some reality to that, some things that we need to look at as far as risk is concerned, and so we'll jump into that. But I think as AI in public service can play a huge role, a huge benefit. I worked for, not exactly on the lines for you guys, but I worked for 10 years at OU in IT, later on a senior level position. And OU is like a little city in a way. We have a fire department, we have police, we have hospitals, we have restaurants. And so I'll try to bring some of the work I did there to bear on maybe some things you guys are dealing with as we go on. So it's important to keep in mind that best practices, being on top of AI, being ahead of the curve, not looking at it, oh, it's something out there that we need to worry about later, but taking initiatives today is critical. And that's the big takeaway I have. If you haven't already, just getting involved in these tools, see what other cities are doing. I'm sure you've had these conversations before, but it's going to take a deep dive up front right now, while the iron's hot, to make sure you're ahead of this curve on AI. So on the good news side, a couple polls have been done recently across multiple industries for executive leadership. And what's their take on AI? Yeah, you can take pictures of the slides, no problem. I'll have a QR code at the end so you can download it as well. But welcome to take all the pictures you want. Anyway, so I thought this was positive that leaders are saying, we're not really looking at AI to replace people, because this is the #1 concern employees have about AI. It's going to replace my job. I see some nodding heads back there, so you may have heard that. But good news is that they're seeing it more as a way to increase productivity. And you've heard this mantra before, and we'll see how it plays out. But it'll make people perform better, freeing their time to do more complex things. And that's starting to play out a little bit. We'll see how that rolls out. But it's good to see. And there are other things along the right side of that curve that I thought were pretty positive statements for leadership to make, right? I love the one on well-being. We have a lot of conversations with clients on well-being with technology because it is overwhelming and it's getting more so. So digital well-being is a hot topic. So I was kind of surprised to see it pop up there. And executives are saying, hey, AI could play a role in digital well-being for our employees. So I think it's interesting. We'll see how that turns out. But I thought that was an interesting slant on it. So not all dark and gloomy from an executive leadership standpoint, which is a good thing. All right, AI co-working. I want to talk a bit about AI co-working. It's becoming a buzzword. I don't know if everyone's heard of it, framed like AI co-working, but because we're augmenting human behavior now, looking at AI as a co-worker, as a team member, is starting to get traction. So right now, if you're using AI tools, right, it's kind of a one-off. You use a tool. But as AI starts to do more and more of the business process, or the processes for service delivery, whatever those processes are, as AI takes more of that on, it's going to be like a team member with problems and fallacies and gaps, just like a team person would. So I think that's going to be a tipping point. I like the idea of a digital twin, where you have your digital twin that's carrying out tasks for you that you aren't. It's representing you. So it may be replying to emails for you. It may be fielding questions. It may be redirecting information for you, right, as your digital twin representing you. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott. So Scott could have a digital twin, and people interact with Scott's digital twin and get information that they need, and questions answered, and they don't know they're dealing with Scott's digital twin. They think they're dealing with Scott. Right? Well, again, we'll see how that plays out, but we're starting to see that happen in a lot of ways right now. AI as a boss, yeah, maybe not the best wording for it. Now, will it inform leadership on actions to take, Risks to look out for? Yes. And I think it's kind of science fiction-y that we're going to be, beholden to AI as, we report to them as running our organizations. But I think that as influencer to leadership, I think it'll definitely happen. So I think it helps to think of AI as a coworker at this point, right? What if it was a team member? How are you going to manage that team member, right? What are the risks with that team member? What are the impacts? What are the HR impacts? If I have AI doing part of my process and AI makes a mistake that goes to HR, who's responsible? Is it me or is it the AI that's doing part of my job? And how do you rectify that issue? So that's a big question. Any HR people in here? It's probably all IT, right? Any HR? Yeah. But if you haven't talked to HR, this will come up. I love running this by HR because you can see their eyes get about that big when you bring that topic up. So anyway, AI as coworker, I think that's important to take a look at that. I kind of narrowed this down. There's a lot of literature on this, but I kind of tried to reduce it a bit. 3 approaches. You can build your own AI. There are platforms out there. If you want to get into it, we have clients right now that are building their own LLMs, their large language models, right? They're taking their data, creating their own thing. Heavy lift. I do think for developers, though, this is where it's headed. I think right now AI is so good at generating code that a hardcore full stack AI developer, I think that's going to transition over to these developers are really building AI algorithms and directing AI in certain directions. I think that's going to be the future of developers. Any developers in here? So I think that's developer, yeah. So I don't know if you see it the same way, but I think that it's going to be trending that way. And you'll really have to understand the mechanics. So yeah, you can build your own. Use standalone, which is what we'll be talking about here today. I'll show some examples of standalone. Generative AI, GPT obviously is big. There are many others that we can talk about. But this is going to be the core set of tools that people use and are using for AI. The last one I think is really where the majority of people are going to interact with AI. It's going to be the worker that AI is just embedded in the tools they use. Microsoft's coming out with Copilot. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. I had a chance to talk to a Copilot evaluator that was designated by Microsoft. And yeah, the stories were incredible. He said that he had he had Copilot build in Excel a financial model, an analytic, that it built it. He says, great. He had no idea how it worked or how it was built. And he was really worried when his Copilot evaluation ran out because he didn't know how to use it. It produced the results, but he didn't know the mechanics. He said, well, it would take him a month to figure out how that thing works. So he became dependent on it pretty quickly. He said he rarely got into Outlook, which to me was really fascinating. Rarely got into Outlook. He said Outlook would sometime, under his control, respond to emails for him. Some of the more complex emails, it would come up with a script and say, hey, how's this look? And yeah, it looks good, go ahead and send it. And he reduces Outlook by half.
So what does it do, just ask him?
Yeah, it would pop up and say, hey, you got an email from this, here's a reply that I've scripted, thought you should look at it. You say, yeah, it looks good, hit send.
Like a digital assistant.
Pardon?
Like a digital assistant.
Yeah, exactly, like on steroids, right? But you can see, you got to be careful with that. I envision where, and we talked about this, he could go to Copilot and say, hey, I need to update the budget from last year. And Copilot opens Excel, gets the last budget, opens that for you, and it's just there. And then it says, yeah, I need to compare it to our current expenditures. Oh, it goes and finds that information, brings that in, and merges the two together, and you haven't used Excel yet. It's just there. And then you can take that to whatever direction you want to take it. So I think that these things are happening. I'm not sure exactly when Copilot's going to roll out. Right now, it's $30 per person per month for S3 and above. And the reason Microsoft's making it expensive and a little hard to get into is that they're worried about overwhelming their bandwidth. They're worried that they don't have the capacity because the curve is going to be so huge and so fast. Probably have heard this, ChatGPT when it was rolled out had 1 million users in a week. They think it'll be quadruple that. So they're putting price levels on it, not because they want to charge a lot, but because they want to control how it rolls out, which I thought was an interesting way to look at it. Salesforce has Einstein GPT, which I haven't seen yet, but I heard that was pretty amazing, if there are any Salesforce users out here. But anyway, the point is that all the major applications will have a very strong presence in AI, and they'll be underlying their whole product line, regardless of what the vendor is. I think AI is also going to be like flat screen TVs. You know, when you go out and buy a TV, you don't say, oh, I went out and bought a flat screen TV, right? Every TV is a flat screen. It's just embedded. It's just part of everything we use today, right? Yeah, so I think that's what's going to happen. It's just going to be pervasive and everywhere. So capability levels for AI. This is pretty general. You guys probably know all this already. Self-learning, AI is doing self-learning already, right? It's using these LLMs. It has to be taught something, where to start, but it's sort of like teaching a 5-year-old. You teach them some letters, some words, and they can build from that. And I think that's where we're at. We're not at a fully autonomous self-learning AI platform yet, but we're definitely getting there. So semi-autonomous, from this perspective, it's AI being able to do sections of my daily business processes, what I do for a living. It's going to do parts of that. It is close to and getting to the point where it could do whole sections of a process, and that's where you worry about it replacing people or people losing their jobs, right? But organizations are looking at personal transition to another set of tasks or something at a higher level that they need to be involved in. And then self-aware and cognitive, or AGI, artificial general intelligence, consciousness. You know, I'm a skeptic on this. I think what's going to happen is that AGI, it depends on how you spin it. You know, is a computer conscious or is it not? Can it be conscious? Who knows? I think you have to go sit under a tree in the forest and contemplate, you know, what consciousness is in order to answer that question. But we're getting closer to a cognitive thinking entity with AI, and I've seen it with, you know, some of the vendors I've been involved with lately.
If it comes to visit you while you're in the forest, then we have
Yeah, good point. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, that is so true. That's good. Intelligent automation. I point this out because it's overlooked. I don't understand. I don't get it why it's overlooked. I haven't seen more of it. So we have automation tools. I'm sure you're aware of Empower Automate, which is embedded now in Microsoft platform. UiPath, where you can build your own routines and say, if this, do this, move this file over here, and it just follows your instructions, right? Pretty straightforward. Intelligent automation now is adding the AI component where AI can make decisions. Oh, I see inside this file, it contains this, so that means it'll probably go over here, right? Because it read the file. So intelligent automation, I think, will have a play. And I think that'll be the other big thing. You'll see AI embedded, and then you'll see big plays with IT really focusing on intelligent automation. What core processes are really holding us back, right? What core processes are holding us back from serving the public in the way we want to serve the public? I think that's where IT is going to focus and figure out what tools we need to bring to bear so AI can really help us deliver what we want to deliver, right? And do some of these processes for us at a higher level, more complex level. So those will be the components involved. So natural language processing, all the components of AI are embedded in intelligent automation. But don't be fooled because UiPath says, oh yeah, we're intelligent, we're AI. I have not seen that yet. When someone does it, let me know, because I'd love to see actually how AI works in this scenario. But they call it robotic process automation AI, and it really isn't. It's just, you know, following a set of rules that you tell it to follow. So anyway, we'll see how that transpires, but I want to point that out specifically because I don't know why it's not getting more attention. I think it will. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. Okay, so let's do another poll here. You stop that one. If you came in late, you can go to slido.com and type in FPOV AI, and you can join in this. You won't see the results if you don't take the poll. Oh, good.
Somebody chose Shuart Connor.
You like that one? All right. Obscure movie reference. I'm glad somebody got it.
Say that code one more time.
Pardon?
Yeah, you said there's a code you type in. Code you type in, you said, we go this,
Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to slido.com and then FPOV AI, and they may ask you to join, which you can, and then you should see the question when you go to, you got to go to polls though, up in the upper right once you get in. All right, good. So not too worried about it taking over the world. I don't think it will. I think, in fact, on a lot of this, humans will put a governor on it. Humans as a collective will decide how far to go with this, because we've done that in the past. We've done that with other technologies, from the railroad to telegraph system. Right. So I think that'll play an important role. And unless you teach it to launch missiles, Microsoft Copilot does not know what a ballistic missile is, right? So it'll never learn that because it's not in its cohort of learning. It's only if we teach it to do that, or it's going to be a problem. All right, so let's talk about what AI can be used for. Should staying on time here. I thought this was interesting. I saw this in an article, I think in Forbes, and I was looking at it, and it talked about all the things, right? AI obviously can do analytics really well, diagnostic predictive analysis. It does that really well. This is really the same list that we have for data analytics 5 years ago, right? These were all the things data analytics can do. Now these are all the things that AI can do. When I read that, I thought, oh, what's going to be interesting is that data scientists, right? Data analysts, their roles, I think, will change significantly because AI can go out and search a trillion data points in a matter of seconds and find out connections that a data scientist or a human could never do. It can pull in all sorts of data sources that data scientists may not even know exists. You see this in X-ray evaluation. Doctors can't look and compare X-rays with every other X-ray ever taken for that particular diagnosis. Right? AI can do that. So I think the role of data scientist is going to shift dramatically. And this is where a high-level knowledge worker is going to be impacted with AI more than maybe a basic skilled individual contributor will be. They will have to come up with models, the learning mechanics for AI, but they will be out of the raw data and analytic arena. So you can come back to me 5 years, see if I was right on that, but that's my take on it right now. What I wish I had when I was at OU was this component right here, and AI is going to play a huge role in simulation. So President Boren wanted to build a city within a city at OU. He wanted a housing development for students that had restaurants, had its own network grid built in, high-end Wi-Fi, allow students bring in multiple devices, right, high-end connectivity. It would have been great if we could have ran simulations on that to see the impact of, as that community grew inside of OU, to see the impact it had on all the resources. And we did some simulations, but we could never do it at the level that AI could have done it. It could have come up with so many more simulations, tested that, solved a lot of problems that we ran into when we were rolling out that capability. So I think simulation is going to play a bigger role, and there are going to be specific tools, and there are some now, that can do simulations based on multiple data sources. And that's going to be really interesting to see. And I'll get in that a little bit later. Emergency management? Anyone here involved in emergency management? And yeah, you probably all are at some level anyway. But today, what we're going to be talking deeper about is generative AI. That's the core. All the tools that people are using now, where it's headed, new tools coming on the market, are all based on generative AI. So when you talk about AI tools, I just equate that right now, today anyway, with generative AI tools. We'll talk about what that means in a second. So, generative AI, meaning it generates output. It's capable of generating whatever we want it to generate. It generates solutions, answers, code. If we want to generate code, it can do that. It's self-learning on a huge, massive scale in a matter of nanoseconds even. And it can create now very complex and intricate outcomes in some areas that humans just can't compete with. And I'll show you examples of that too coming up. So, huge, big, I can't stress that enough. What I like is that, for me personally, my experience has been solving this blank canvas problem. Right now we have clients that are asking us, we have an AI leadership workshop, it's a one-day workshop, getting very popular. Right? So we had the one-day workshop with a large company here in Oklahoma City, and I was taking reams of notes, right, during the conversation. 30 executive leadership people in this room all talking about where AI is going to head in their industry, how it's going to impact them, people, everything. So I'm collecting notes. One-day workshop, great feedback. I got home, I opened up Word document, blank document, and I'm like, I got to translate all these notes, not the best typer in the world, misspelling, incomplete sentences, got to load it in, go through. It's going to take me a couple hours to go through this. I thought, I'm just going to load it in ChatGPT. Just cut and paste, ChatGPT, boom. I had 3-page bulleted, well-worded, in some cases worded better than I could have worded it, ready to go in 15 seconds, maybe, on the outside. And I was shocked. I thought, this is great. And I went through it, and this is probably, pardon?
Did it give you emojis too?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I wish it did, because thumbs up or something. I went through it, and it is 75, 80% there, right? So it saved me an hour and a half, but think of an hour and a half per day per employee. That adds up really, really fast, and that is a mundane task, right? I could have asked it, I'm sure. In fact, I might go back and do this. Could have asked it for ideas, retrospective recommendations. Maybe I was a little afraid too, because that's my job, doing that part of it, right? But I think it could give me some recommendations to work off of, right? So it can do that. Obviously, simple tasks, mundane tasks. I hate doing it. I dread doing it. But now it's a tool that I will use every time we take notes or something. Definitely improves speed of the work and quality, because translating those notes, I didn't have to worry about the wording. It came up with really, really surprisingly well-worded themes. But it's drawing on a trillion things people have written that I'm trying to write, right? And it's drawing on those and coming up with the best scenario. So let's talk about ChatGPT. Let's take a little bit deeper dive into what that actually is. Some of this may be basic for you. With ChatGPT, this is a good, fun party thing, trivia to ask, what's GPT stand for? Because everybody uses the term, but not a lot of people knows what it stands for, and it's sort of cryptic. It's generative, meaning it creates stuff for you. It's pre-trained, meaning a lot of training. LLM, large language models, started in 2012. So OpenAI started training these models, 10 years ago, right? But training it to a level where it could start to learn on its own. In the past, we had to completely train AI, right? But now we've trained it enough so it can do its own analysis, its own learning, and build upon what it learned from the human trainers. And transformer, because transforming information from one state to another. Pretty straightforward. And all it's doing is parsing our language. It's parsing whatever language, English or whatever, and it's saying, what's the best fit for this, right? It's going to take this in the simplest form. I could say it's, it's raining meatballs outside or something like that. But it's going to take the most straightforward answer, and it's going to look and say, what fits best from what I can gather, current weather, where it's located, where you're located from, and going to fit in what I think is the best solution. Pretty easy for AI right now, but it could get a little more complex. So what's the weather like today in Dakota, in winter? Well, it's going to have to know North Dakota, what that means. It's going to have to know winter. It's going to have to look up. It's going to have to understand what it is I'm really trying to get to, right? Just as the day's weather, I need to interpret that. So as this structure gets more complex, it has to bring to bear more information and more from its learned model. So I would guess snowy, being North Dakota and this time of year, I would guess snowy, but it's going to make its best guess estimate, and it's improving all the time. So if I ask this question, it's going to remember what it did, and 100 other people ask that, and it's going to combine all that and learn, okay, and get an idea that it's really cold in North Dakota in the winter, and now it knows that. So when you give information to it, that goes into the model. So everything you give it, sensitive information or otherwise, goes into its learning model, and it's out there forever. Now there's a way around that, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. But this is definitely something to keep in mind, but that's the very fundamental basics of how these GP tools function. And again, it's everywhere. Salesforce Einstein's been around a long time. It's what's quote their AI model. It hasn't changed that much. They just had a GPT at the end of their product name, right? So now it's got all this focus because it says GPT on it. The lifespan of ChatGPT, where it came from. So June 11th, 2018, 1 was released. I had a chance to see that. It didn't do a very good job. Came up with some really bizarre answers that were really scary. 2019 release, you can see GPT-3 was the big breakthrough, right? That's where the learning algorithms got to good enough state where they could actually start making some really interesting responses. And that was betaed in 2020, right, GPT-3. And then 3.5 was released, and that was a big kahuna. I got a sun rising over that because I think that date will be historical. It may not be the date for AI, but it's going to be a really, really important date. We just don't realize it. So historians in the future will go, we are on November 20th, November 30th, 2022. What was that?
Or it's going to erase us.
Pardon?
It's going to erase us.
Oh yeah, that's true. Remember in the movie The Matrix where he says, and mankind gave rise to its accomplishment in AI. You know, I don't know if it'll be at that level, but there was such a huge transformation on that date that, I still don't think we realize the impact of that yet. 4 is out. 4.5 was supposed to be out by now. I looked last night just to see if it recently came out, and they said it's going to be coming out September, October. Obviously, it's no longer October, so I'm not sure when it's coming out, 4.5. GPT-5 is supposed to have AGI capabilities. The initial rollout was 2025. I'm super, super skeptical. Again, I think they could say it's AGI, artificial general intelligence, cognitive, aware of itself. I think it'll be whatever their definition is, and they'll call it AGI. I just can't see it within like 10 years maybe. But again, it's all going to be on how you define what AGI is. So we'll see what happens. I had an interesting experience with GPT. So I'm going to show you the results of what I did. So BERT is the Google version of ChatGPT. So Google came out with it. I haven't used it a lot, but you can turn it on. Sometimes now when you do a Google search, you'll get that result up front, which is kind of cool. It seems pretty good. So I asked ChatGPT to compare ChatGPT to BERT. So this is what I got. I love the human component of that. 2 powerhouses, natural language processing, NLP, which is just its ability to comprehend. Both built on the transformer architecture, and it went ahead and just listed the capabilities of BERT. It says created by Google at the bottom, and then after that, it listed the capabilities of ChatGPT. So, okay, that's cool, did the comparison. Then I said, hey, ChatGPT, since you're the one comparing yourself to your competitor, are you biased on this? Am I getting a biased answer? And so I thought this was pretty good. The elephant in the room. Which I thought was great. While I strive to provide impartial and balanced information, it's a legitimate question. I love this. Whether there's some subconscious, or in my case, submodel bias favoring GPT, which I thought was a great answer. I'm just comparing strengths to the weaknesses. And then it goes on. It says, okay, going to give you more. I sought to distinguish the two models, right, objectively. The goal is it defending itself, its responses? And then I love the last part, after revisiting the response. So after I thought about it for another 2 nanoseconds, I thought, I believe this is good. And again, it's kind of defensive. And at the end, it says, I am indeed a GPT-based model. So you can feel, and these aren't canned responses. It's coming up with these responses on its own. So its wording is its wording, not some programmer's wording.
Is that ChatGPT 4 that you asked those questions?
This is 4.
Okay.
Yeah, this is 4.
That's the newest model.
Yeah, this is 4. Yeah, so it's on the new model. But just the human part of it, I could see this being a regular discussion I'd have with a human being. I'm not sure I could tell the difference, if a human was on the other side of this. So and maybe I'm looking too far into it, but I get a feel from it, from how it's worded, that, whoa, dude, back off a little bit, getting a little defensive there. Anyway.
Did
Good.
you ask Bert the same?
No, that would have been fair. I should go in and ask Bert the same thing. I'm going to do that. That's a great idea. So I urge you, if you're using ChatGPT, great. If you can swing it, I would buy the enterprise version. It's $20 a month, I think. I don't know if anyone signed up for it. $20 a month. You get priority access. It's got a lot of features. It's got API, library, everything in it. It's got a lot to it. Plus, it keeps your data out of the LLM. So if we're about putting sensitive data in, I know government, public has a lot to do with disclosure, right? So if you're worried about getting it in there, with this, it'll keep it separate out. You don't have to worry about that. Because some people have put in sensitive information, which you can, just stored forever in the LLM and be used as part of its language background. Future pricing, they're supposed to come out with a price break, I heard, in December. I hope they did what Salesforce did with .org. They have reduced pricing for public and nonprofit organizations. I hope they do the same kind of thing with ChatGPT, because that price can get expensive for some organizations.
I'm curious real quick, with the enterprise model, do you always have to cut and copy, or is there like a way you can actually upload it?
Yeah, you can upload like, hey, I want you to read this PDF for me and give me a 3-paragraph synopsis of this 30-page legal document. It'll do it. Quickly through this, Midjourney, version 1 of Midjourney. So Midjourney is the graphic generator, right? It's a generative AI, generates graphics. This is version 1, which is really scary. Nightmarish, in fact, of what the prompt was: a human hand, draw me a human hand. Version 2, still nightmarish. Should have done this on Halloween. Version 3, yeah. But, yeah, version 4, it's interesting how it's interpreting wrinkles in the hand. I thought that was kind of interesting. Then you get to 5.2.
Good.
So you can see the progression, and I think this is a really good example of the progression as AI as a whole. This product's only a year and a half old, right? And look how fast it learned, how far it's come. I mean, that human hand on the lower right, and you can say, draw me a human hand like Leonardo da Vinci would draw it. It'll draw it like that, or whatever you want to put in the prompts. But yeah, that really shows the progression of AI. I'm going to show you another AI generative tool, and this is a whole stack of possible tools, right? So if you want to create a website quickly for something going on in the community. You're asked, hey, we're standing up this new thing, can IT throw out a new website or sub-site or whatever? Something like Wix AI, where it goes in and it just really handles it on prompts. It says, hey, oops, went too far. It can do it on prompts, and it can just say, hey, I want a website with this capability. I don't know why it's not playing. Should play. But it can go, and just based on prompts, it can tell you exactly what, so I can get to play here. Yeah, there you go. It can build a website. You can say, okay, what kind of website do you want? I like it to look like this. Here's some pictures I have. And it can go ahead and really create some pretty good looking web pages and just stand them up for you. You have to give it the background information, of course, and then it'll keep asking you questions until it feels it has enough information to do a draft website for you. You can say, oh yeah, I'd like to generate that, and boom, it'll go and generate that site and build it out in a matter of minutes. And then you can edit it, of course, accordingly. And then you can go back and ask more questions. You can say, oh, I don't like this. Can you do better images here? And it'll go ahead and just go ahead and change all those things. So I think if you want to get something up going quickly, and you just got to get a website out here, this is a great tool. So are there different theme options? Sure. There's some options. You can see it's all highly interactive. So I pose this to you. Our future world, will we have menu-driven applications? Why have a drop-down menu? You can just say, hey, I want this. And then that's just a question. It does it. Why would we have an Excel? Why have to go File, Open, and look for this? It'll just be there when I want it, right? And then it'll ask me more questions. And I no longer have a menu-driven application that I'm using.
Wow.
Yeah, so these are all generative AI tools. So I just ask you to, when you're looking at a problem to solve in IT, that you look through the lens of AI first. Is there a tool out there that's generative that we can install or use that'll get me there faster, right? A more cost-reductive thing. So I did just something on grants and community investment management, right? AI tool out there called Optimi, right? That looked interesting. It recommended ChatGPT in there to help grant writers. I don't know how much you guys deal with grants, but I remember that was always a pain for people, writing grants.
I really wish you hadn't put that up there. That is one thing I use ChatGPT.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I swear to God, I'm not lying. I really did. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was great. I was amazed at how well I did.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah. We're just going to bring up the issue of disclosure, right? You know? Yeah. But I think that's I love that. Yeah, but I think that's a thing, though. I'm glad you brought that up, because we have to get to the point where we're saying, yeah, I did this with ChatGPT, because there may be things with disclosure, OMA or whatever, that is office, open, whatever, where you have to disclose if there are meetings, right, public meetings. You know, you have to disclose that. And if you're using ChatGPT together, you may have to disclose that.
There was that case down in Texas, I believe, that the lawyer used, I think it was ChatGPT, and it created fictional cases for him. And so they had to change that they're not allowed to use AI models.
Yeah, and the part, I'm going to skip this one, I'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, I think that, and that's governance chasing the problem. I think we have to get on top of that with governance. So I think that for municipalities, that I pulled this off of Wired magazine. This is an article, you'll see it down there, the date and time. But this is from Alameda, California. You know, this is what they're doing. At every level, governments are searching for ways to harness, you know, this is from the article. I thought that was interesting. I would recommend reading that article. It's a pretty long article. Talked a lot about the downside and risks for government agencies. I thought that the earliest government policies on generative AI will come from cities and states. So you guys are you're leading the cause, right? at least from the public standpoint, right? A lot of this is coming out, and I'm sure that situation came out of a local court system, that would be my guess. So yeah, you guys are going to play an important role, at least in the public sector, on the governance and things that have to go around this. I'll come back to some of these polls because I want to get those out to you. But what I wanted to do is get to some of these use cases, make sure I have time for these. All right, so I took 3 that I'm semi-aware of. I've been in this world myself for a while, not at the level you guys are, but emergency management, RFP generation, or grants. I think grants, like you said, play a huge role in that. General city planning. So I went to ChatGPT to really look at what is the potential for using ChatGPT in each of these scenarios. So I mapped it out, and I don't plan, so for emergency management, ChatGPT can, right? So I built this out. I'm not gonna read through all these, but if you get the deck, you'll have some context if you wanna explore some of this further. But generating scenarios, which I thought was great. You know, in Oklahoma, it's gonna be the scenarios are gonna be what, floods, tornadoes, severe weather, grass fires maybe in some of your areas, right? It can build scenarios based on that and do some what ifs, right? Which I thought was pretty cool. Draft incident briefs, right? And communication, which I thought was really interesting too for mass communication. Now, there isn't anything that ChatGPT would produce that I would just send out on the fly. It still has to be reviewed by the people that are responsible for those things. So many agencies, so many private sector have been in trouble because an employee generated something and just sent it out. And this is where governance has to play a huge role. One of my first steps would be AI governance, right? I would get a group together, I would have an AI workshop, make sure leadership's on the same page. I would build my digital strategy with AI governance as a chief component of that strategy. Those would be the first things I would take care of. And sure, you can explore the tools, roll some things out, but I'd be very careful if I was doing that without the right kind of governance in place. Resource management, I did a FEMA tabletop for emergency response at OU, and my team was in charge of logistics, right? Making sure the supplies were handled to first responders and the follow-up personnel. And man, it would have been great to have something like ChatGPT where it's helping me identify potential resources that are needed for a certain scenario. I mean, how powerful would that be, right? Especially if it's real time, right? If you can have that information real time, you're plugging in the information as you're getting it during an emergency, and then it's giving you responses, potential responses at all these levels. And then after action reports, I think would be big, especially during that scenario, doing after actions, like who remembers? No one's taking notes, yeah, right, during that. But if you're putting a lot of this into ChatGPT, it's remembering that. And you can say, hey, just ask it, out of everything we've done, give me your report. And it'll produce it for you, and then you can build on that. So it's gonna get you ahead of the game a lot faster, especially during something that's so live like an emergency response. Especially as ChatGPT goes on, you'll be able to combine it with other data sources on your own, right? GIS information, which I thought was interesting, you could bring that in. You can add to ChatGPT's understanding and do a whole bunch more complex models that are unique to your environment or location. Again, just put that in there as a disclaimer. You gotta make sure you got your hands on what it's producing, what you're sending out the door, especially in the public sector of openness, right? So something to be particularly careful for you guys. RFP generation, I would love to have this when I was doing RFPs. I don't know in IT if you guys generate RFPs, but being able to do the needs assessment, content creation, just like for grants, is big. And then coordinate internal review and feedback. Ours were all done by committees. So we had 20 people on the RFP committee and trying to corral all their input, make sure everyone's on the same page, make sure everyone's communicated to, was half the battle of RFP generation. And ChatGPT can handle that for me. So to me, that would be a huge reduction in time to getting those out the door. City planning, I thought was interesting. Brainstorming and feasibility, right? How feasible is it to take on something like that? queries, survey analysis, report generation. Again, my favorite, minutes. This is something you can go back and do right now, right? Next time you're in a meeting, take notes, right? You take minutes? Yeah. So running in, putting that in there, try it out. I think that is definitely hit the ground running with that. And resource allocation, I want to explore that more because I think that's so interesting. I don't know what information it needs to be able to give you advice on allocating resource towards a particular problem or situation, but I would love to see what that looks like. Compliance. In public sector, compliance I know is huge. So I think it's going to be really important to figure out what the laws are. The court made a decision on your scenario, but they didn't have anything in place beforehand. So no one probably got in trouble because there's no precedent set, right? And now they have one. But I would sure like to be ahead of the curve before it's up for some sort of litigation because something that was put out that should have been put out. So simulation, I think, is also really huge. What if, we widen this road? What if we change the traffic lights? What impact is that going to have on traffic? Did we cover all the possible traffic scenarios, in this? AI is going to find all those that humans won't necessarily be able to see all those scenarios because it has looked at every possible traffic scenario in its trillion data point database. All right, so ideas. Urge you, and I'll leave this open today, but I urge you to share your idea. If you have any ideas right now that you think could help with your situation, your city, your municipality, whatever you're in, feel free to put those under ideas because, you guys are the colleagues. You guys don't necessarily have a chance to share a lot of ideas with each other in this respect. So feel free to, if you have an idea or something of that nature, please go ahead and put it in now or later on today if you could. All right, so I want to talk about risks. So I'm trying to keep you guys to about an hour. So some of the major risks, which I put that at the end because I just want to make sure it sticks with you leaving this room because that's my big concern. And Hart with OPOV, that guy's got an amazing background with the state, with risk both at every level, both cybersecurity as well as physical risk. So he's always available to answer questions in this realm as well. I think he talked about some of it during the keynote, in fact. They can be biased, they can be discriminatory, because again, it started out with, it's human data, right? The data is created by humans, so there's going to be bias inherent in it. And they're making every effort they can to remove bias, but it's going to creep in. Discriminatory as well. And you've seen that come up in the news before. So regulatory risk for sure, absolutely. I'm not too concerned about this. It can provide a wrong answer, but I think that's why you still need experts. Still need us to be able to interpret that and go, is that legitimate? Does that fit the context? Also, AI can't put in our experiences. It doesn't know our human experiences. It doesn't understand the humans that we're communicating to like we might know them. So it can't add any of that inference into it yet, right? So I don't think it's an issue right now because people are pretty leery, pretty careful around AI, but I would keep that in mind, the over-dependence on that. Obviously, new costs for AI, some of these tools, if you want to implement them. To me, from this standpoint, I would be looking at all my core vendors and say, give me your AI roadmap over the next 5 years. So between now and within 5 years, I need to decide if I'm going to stick with you because you have the right AI roadmap, or I'm going to go with a competing vendor because their AI roadmap is better. And if they don't have one, that tells you something right away, because then they're 3 years behind. And if you're thinking, oh, AI isn't going to make a play for us for another 3 or 4 years, great, now's the time to really be figuring out your strategy, your compliance, your governance now, because it's going to could take you that long to get to that point. So today is the time to start. That doesn't mean you can't go forward with AI. You just got to be diligent about your applying it before you get governance in place. Does that make sense? Any questions around that? Exposure to downstream AI risk. Again, I want to know what the vendors are doing, because if you bring in a HR tool, for example, that has AI and it's drafting reports or whatever, it's going to set the organization up for liability. The vendor did it, it's their fault, but you're going to be liable because you're the one that produced it using that tool. So in my contracts, I would really look at those contracts and see, where does the liability fall? We're working with several law firms right now that are helping their clients build into contracts the AI liability component. Who's liable if AI does something stupid? It's big in auto-driving car, in self-driving cars, right? Who's at fault? The insurance companies want to know this, right? So again, it's going to be really important to understand what your vendors are doing in this space, even if you're not going to do anything. Because that's going to be the most pervasive part of what your vendors are putting in that you don't even know is AI, or may not even see it as such. All right. Cyber, obviously criminals are using AI. Hart talked about that. He's up on a lot of that. President Biden, I think yesterday, did an executive order on the need for AI governance, right? They're meeting in London. A lot of world leaders meeting in London today, in fact, right now to talk about this very issue. So top of mind in the government and public sector, for sure. And you just definitely want to keep ahead of that. All right, so let's talk about it. I only got a couple slides left. The AI delivery model. Running very slow for some reason. So obviously, foundational is AI governance and how that plays. Risk oversight. What about audit controls? I would have a scenario for AI audit. You know, have someone come in, or yourselves, you could do this, and audit current use state of AI in your organization. What's happening? You know, what are the risks that are happening like right now while you're in this room? Next then is the AI infrastructure, right? Do you want a list of AI tools that you feel comfortable with people using? You know, do you want to come up with that documentation? Start educating people on how to use it. What are the limits and guidelines for using it? To me, that would be a really good place to start. And I would use ChatGPT to address some of that. You could probably have something today, you know, out on that. Embedded AI, talked about that. Copilot, build into other applications would be my next look to see what the vendors are doing. Then automation, I think intelligent automation is something I'd want a strategy against for sure right now. It's going to be a big play. And then at the top, AI capabilities. At this top for you guys would probably be community engagement. Right at the top of the stack, you know, how is your community going to engage with you through an AI capability? And I would want to define that really well. Right. And then finally, just personally, and this is what I look at personally as well, test out new AI engines as fast as you can. If you haven't used Midjourney, if you haven't used ChatGPT, if you haven't researched Copilot, if you haven't looked at BERT, I would just get on top and start using these tools as soon as possible to see what they're capable of doing. Find out what people around you are doing, what some of the other cities are doing. That article on Wired, it is pretty long, talked about a bunch of other cities around the country and what they're doing in this area. So that is all part of your skills development. Think about what it can be used for that hasn't been done before. Not only from how this can help your organization, but also it'll help you look at risks. Oh, I never thought of it doing interviews with new employees. You know, man, where are the risks in that? Can it do it? To what extent can that do that? So thinking outside the box of what AI can do can help you forecast possible potential gaps and pitfalls they may run into. Finally, and I put this at the top, we're big on this. This is a FPOV thing. We call it rivers of information. And you can, Weston's here videotaping for us. He's got his river of information. Hart has his river. It's just our feed, right? So I like Forbes. MIT has a really good feed for technology. I have my 4 feeds, and I get that fed into my inbox, and it's what keeps me up to date. And so there are some really good feeds. In fact, I think if you I'll show you the QR code here in a second, but if you go to our website, you can see our rivers of information, and if you just want to copy that, really good feed. But keeping up on the information is changing so fast, it's probably the most critical thing to do right now. All right, so given that, so here's a QR code. If you want to download the presentation, we have a trends report out there. We have top 10 AI strategy questions. I would urge you all to consider a strategy. Give me a shout out on LinkedIn if you have any questions about strategy. That's my section at FPOV. I help companies, public and private, figure out their strategy. And I tell you what, every company their strategy is AI oriented. I'm working with small companies, major companies, and they all are focusing their strategy around AI. So it is happening today. Any other questions, comments?
So you mentioned that AI can't take over the world because humans are going to put restrictions on it, but the humans that are designing it and regulating it are the ones that want to take over the world. I mean, they're already reading my mind and putting products in my social media feeds for me to buy it. So what can I do to protect myself individually or away from criminals that are going to misuse?
Yes, and you personally, there's not a lot you can do other than how you use the tools, right? You can't get away from it. Amazon, if you shop on Amazon, AI is so ingrained in Amazon that it's impossible. I mean, you can turn off cookies, you can do this or that, but the cat is out of the bag in a lot of respects. And yes, we are opening AI up to not only criminals, but yeah, you're right, people that want to take over the world. I think that they're late, but I do think the government's starting to step in. I think some of the court things, they're going, whoa, wait a minute, this is too far. And so they're trying to pull it back. In some cases, it's too late to do that, and we're going to see the ramifications. And so it's going to be playing catch up, but I think that risk is there and real. So I don't have a good answer for you on how to turn that faucet even down right now, because it's going so fast. That's why for you, for your organization, for where you work, getting whatever controls you can in place now is so, so critical. You got to understand it to be able to know what to do. So, sorry, I wish I had a better answer for you, but I'm in the same boat. I think about that all the time. And you think, oh, I could pose it to AI, but you're asking the wolf about watching the hen house. So, anything else?
What about the slides for this? It's not showing up this workshop specifically?
Oh, it may not be out. I promise you I'll have that out by the end of the day. Right? Sorry about that. It probably was a late push on my part. Yeah, so I'll make sure that's out there for you guys. Yeah, so hopefully helpful. Some information that you can take away. Again, reach out to me. Love to chat with you. I'm doing some podcasts around this subject. Got one coming up in a couple weeks. I'm doing with one of our founders on AI, people, and strategy. So look for that. I'll post it on LinkedIn as well so you can get the links to the podcast as well. This will be the 10th podcast that I've done, so would love to hear your feedback on that. So.
Dan, I want to say I'm going to get all the PowerPoints and put them on the OMAG website. So they will eventually, probably by Friday, be on omag.org/downloads.
Great, great. So I have two ways to get it. But I'll make sure it's out there so you can get these other things as well. All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Everybody give Dan a round of applause.